Hi, today I'm going to be speaking with Brian Leeners, the CEO of Homerun. And it's a company of particular interest to me because it's in the silica market and silicon market. And this is something I think that most of us are not paying attention to. And yet that market is more than 10 times the size of the rare earth market. Keep that in mind as we talk to Brian. Brian, good morning to you.
And good morning, Jack. Great to meet you.
Same, thank you. Can you please give us a synopsis of your company, what it does, and what you hope to do?
What we've done with Homerun is we've really built a platform based on a core asset, which is our high quality, high purity silica asset in Brazil. Underneath that platform, we're supporting 3 or 4 vertical integrations. The first is obviously processing the silica to higher purity for a higher price. The second is processing the silica into solar glass in the Brazilian market, which is a very large solar market. The third, we've been working with our friends at the U.S. Department of Energy, NREL Research Division in Colorado, to integrate our silica into their enduring long-term energy storage system. And then the fourth is bringing all of that together with a platform that balances the tool sets that are required when you're deploying these assets using an EMS system, energy management system, and moving that into future partners, but also anticipating that our products will be used in those solutions in the future.
Have you done anything in the silicon wafer area?
Yeah, we've been working with our friends at UC Davis in California. And the focus, Jack, has been to, if you want to be in the silicon space, effectively you're going to need a new way to produce silicon because the Chinese dominate and Southeast Asian countries dominate silicon for a variety of different reasons. So from our perspective, and being good corporate citizens relative to not only Brazil, but having that mandate, generally speaking, we've been working with the folks at UC Davis to use what are called thermoelectric techniques. In other words, using electricity to do the heavy lifting that's historically been done by hydrocarbons. And so we're looking at ways of using electrical energy in order to not only purify our product, which we already made an announcement on, but to advance our product directly to silicon and advance our product into mixes like silicon and graphite, which is silicon carbide.
Okay. I have to tell you that I suspect that I've been involved with ultra-high purity silicon longer than you've been alive. I began work in it in my first year in graduate school in 1963. Okay. And I was actually hired by Westinghouse as a young fool to manage a Zolkowski furnace operation, which was making ultra-high purity silicon then for the electronics industry. And what is fascinating me is how you've so far flown under the radar. The radar, by the way, which is enabled by silicon. And is now, so I have to admit, I'm guilty of this because until I looked at your company, I wasn't thinking about this space. And then I realized that even though silicon, the element, is the 8th most common element on the Earth's surface, it's very, very difficult and expensive to produce ultra-high purity silicon, which is what you need for the electronics industry, for the specialized glass industry, and even for the steel industry. Okay, so I was really interested in reading your corporate presentation, and I urge everybody to look at that. And I can't overemphasize the fact that what you're doing, in my opinion, puts your company in the very top tier of critical material industries. So having said all that, please tell us some more about where your projects are and what your timetable is for the products you want to produce, the target date for production, and how much you want to produce.
Yeah, and thank you. Your synopsis of the industry is correct. Along with the energy transition, we're going through a materials transition, and I think we're going to see plenty of advancements in the material space, especially with entities out there using artificial intelligence to speed up those results. It used to take a long time to produce new materials, and with artificial intelligence, you can speed up that process. As far as products we're going to produce, first product is silica. Our preference is to always use our own product. In the industrial material space, if you're using your own product, you're getting better margin. You know what I'm talking about. Whereas if you're selling it as a raw commodity or even an upgraded commodity, you're making lesser margin, generally speaking. Our target in the processed silica space is to get our product to 99.99 plus. That's when you start to work at the top of the pyramid. So that's our goal. We've achieved that. We've achieved that at UC Davis. We've achieved that at NREL. And we've achieved that with our friends at Dorfner Anzaplan in Germany, who are working on the process flows and the equipment capex relative to building the processing plant in Brazil next to the resource. The second product is solar glass. And people would go, why solar glass? The reason why is because silica is the biggest component of solar glass. So interestingly enough, if you take silica out of solar, you have no solar left, because it's the basis for the silicon, but it's also the basis for the heaviest component of solar panels, which is the glass. And the glass will live beyond silicon, if people know what I mean, relative to what's going on in solar with perovskite. So we focused on that. One of the reasons we're doing that is because we have that quality of silica in our resource. Literally, it can go straight from wash and sort plant into the furnace of a solar glass plant. That would make us the producer of the best quality solar glass in the world from a purity perspective. Chinese dominate that space, but they're using lower quality silica to dominate. And then the third product is integrating our silica into energy storage, the energy storage system that we're working on with NREL, which is a utilization of silica to store the energy. So electricity in, heat storage in the silica, electricity and heat out. So it's a novel format relative to what people are used to, seeing a chemical battery as the energy storage system, because it's using the storage of that electricity is done as heat in the medium, which is the silica. So we're working on that with those folks. And then elsewhere in the storage, in the particular chemistry side of batteries, we're big fans of silicon and hybrid silicon graphite anodes within the battery space. People who understand the performance of materials know that what silicon can do as an anode, graphite doesn't do very well. What graphite does in an anode, silicon doesn't do very well. So it's our view that bringing those two together, and that's happening in a variety of different ways, is probably the best solution commercially in that space. So we've been working on that through things like silicon carbide. And then the last element of that is the integration of people who understand marketing strategies in vertically integrated companies. You not only create push for your products, but you create pull for your products. So we've gone about acquiring some assets in Europe, some corporate assets in Europe, in order to develop the pull-through and our presence in the markets that we're really focused on, which is Latin America and the EU in particular right now. And the acquisition strategy has brought technologies to the table, inclusive of perovskite, and also distribution pathways relative to the technology that we acquired in those acquisitions.
I'd like to point something out. The average person probably has an idea that beach sand is silica. And they say, typically, gee, there's a whole lot of it, so what's the problem? And then some of us know what quartz is. We've seen nice crystals are used in decorations and things like that. And we think, well, that must be sort of common too. And what they don't realize is how energy difficult it is to get from that stuff to the materials that are used for semiconductor bases, as you say, solar glass, particular specialized minerals like perovskite and synthetic perovskite. And now we've lost half the audience, Brian. So what I want to do is I want everyone to look at the Critical Minerals Institute website, on which we'll have an explanation for everyone of the difference between silica, silicon, silicone, which we're not talking about today, perovskite, things like that, because people get confused. And what they don't realize is that the technology of our time is to take stuff we find and ultra purify it to its origin that no human being ever saw before. For example, 4, 5, 6, 9 silicon. Then, of course, we contaminate it to get the properties we want. That's the sort of the comedy, I call it, of modern electronics. You kill yourself to make ultra high purity material just so you can then contaminate it again, but this time in a controlled way. I am fascinated by your company because I didn't know that you existed. And I did not realize, even though I've been in the electronics industry for decades, that silicon itself was not a primary focus of the Western market, let's say. And I think you picked the two best markets to target, in my opinion. Europe, which has nothing going for it in the way of raw materials and needs everything done for it, and the global South, which is the coming attraction for growth in this world. So we're going to be following your company. And quite frankly, I look forward to our next interview because I want to know what you fellows are up to. It takes me back to the good old days when I didn't worry about anything except keeping a job. Thank you, Brian.
No problem. And the fact that you worked at Westinghouse, I mean, I respect that, where that comes from. There's a demonstration right there of what's happened in the materials world over a few decades relative to Chinese dominance versus where things used to be. And it's going to take new techniques to change that dominance. And that's where creativity and clever ideas come in. And we'd like to think that that we're pretty good at the creativity.
I'd like to bring this interview together just by reversing a point I made at the beginning. The silicon market is 10 times, 15 times the size of the rare earth market. Everybody has to keep that in mind. And yet there are fewer companies in the silicon space than there are in the rare earth space. So everybody needs to think about this. We really can't live without silicon. We've become addicted to the electronic society. I don't know if that's the case with rare earths. I don't want to think about it. Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome, and thank you very much for the interview. I appreciate it.